Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Wonderkamer. I am your dilettante, Jen Rumpel, and I'm here with
Dave Powell.
And Tracy Anderson Powell.
Also a couple of dilettantes. And how are you guys doing today?
Oh, terrible.
It's just dead silence as we try and figure out how we are.
We have no idea how we are. Have you seen what it's like outside? It's wretched. But you know what?
Thing.
We're here together. I'm snugged up in this lovely little walk-in closet. And because it's sort of a perfect audio space, and I'm in my happy place.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. I hope this episode doesn't tear you out of your happy place. It'll be an interesting one, because it's my turn today to take on to reveal something, to pull an object from the Wonderkamer to show to you and our audience. So this one is going to get... Oh, go ahead, Dave.
I was about to say, to our dear audience, the way this works is because Tracy and I, as you might have noticed, are a couple. And so Tracy and I always kind of know what the other one has cooking. Jen often hints what she has coming in. And in this case, Jen has hinted absolutely nothing, aside from the fact that it's a sprawling, complicated topic, and we have no idea what we're in for.
Okay, yes, it is sprawling and complicated, and that could be an issue. But you know what? I'm learning how to write a podcast script. So I'm also exploring different concepts, as I like to do. And, if this is a place where we can do that, where we can branch out and look at things from a different or unique perspective. Some things that maybe aren't even that obscure, but if you look at it from a certain way, could be seen, in a fascinating new light. Anyway, enough of that word salad from me. I'm actually going to get started on our topic. I was kind of going on a bit. Do you think places or objects can be cursed?
Yes.
I'm thinking in particular of places.
I'm an agnostic on the concept of being able to curse or place or object. I dearly want it to be the case, and I'm willing to accept that it is possible. But I'm also not convinced it's ever happened in a way that will convince me. But perhaps you will change my mind. That's what I'm here for.
You don't need to change my mind because I am already convinced.
Okay, you're pretty affirmative. Yes, places can be cursed. Objects can be cursed.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, myself too. I think of myself as pretty rational. So, I prefer sort of an evidence-based approach to problem solving and to life. I don't believe in the supernatural, pretty much a materialist, Occam's razor, all that stuff. But sometimes, when you go places, you get vibes, right? I guess I kind of believe in vibes. We all believe in vibes. So sometimes these vibes are bad. So we're going to talk about a bit of a bad vibey situation here. So where do vibes come from? Do vibes come from the place itself? Do the vibes come from our minds?
Ooh.
This is a whole philosophical debate we can get into, which we don't need to because this is part of the question.
On the origin of vibes. Okay.
Yeah. The origin of vibes.
I always thought the vibes came from the location.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, it's hard to say because it's a little bit of both, I would say. So I'm sort of thinking, again, in particular places, right? Vibes are informed by our experiences of a place. Like, have we been there before? Is it somewhere we're familiar with? It could be informed by our personal history. Of course, everything we do, we all bring baggage to everything, right? We might even be subconsciously aware of the history of a region that kind of imparts a feeling to it, right? This is basically what psychogeography is about. So I'm not a philosopher, and I'm not a theoretician in any great sense. I'm a dilettante, as I've said, right? So I'm going to do my best with this topic. So have you heard the term psychogeography? Are you familiar with the concept?
I am
Perhaps
not.
Vaguely.
Passingly.
Okay, that's good because this will be new and hopefully interesting. So we'll back up a bit. So psychogeography, this concept, emerged from the situationist, which this is a Marxist movement. So of course, I approve. Marxist situationist movement in France in the 1950s.
Oh.
So situationism is a bit different. Have you heard of that?
No.
Yes.
Okay. You have? Okay, cool. But maybe I'll just continue to summarize. So the situationism, as far as I can interpret, going back to the documents, is the idea basically that art should explore true human experiences and desires, authentic experience, in contrast to what has been essentially a commodified and alienated culture that capitalist society produces, right? I don't like MCU movies does anyone? But, this is what the culture produces. It's sort of an alienating experience. We don't have control over the culture we produce necessarily. So situationism is sort of about that. Mass media, then, and industrial capitalist society have basically turned us into passive consumers of culture rather than creators for the most part, right? So what the situationists want us to think about is how we can create situations to provoke what they call collective ambiances, which is really not defined very well. It's essentially new emotions, new experiences that sort of poeticize or romanticize the everyday.
Okay.
So it's kind of interesting.
Yes.
There is a lengthy document, which we will link to in the notes. It's Report on the Construction of Situations and on the International Situationist Tendencies, Conditions of Organizations and Action. This is a title. It reads, the goal of situationism must be to expand the non-mediocre part of life, to reduce the empty moments of life as much as possible. So it's sort of coming out of a similar philosophy of like existentialism, where you're finding meaning in life. Again, it's all sort of ephemeral, vaguely described, but it's about reconnecting with authentic life in terms of real life experiences, real world experiences, and creation.
Right.
I also do.
Sorry to interject a little bit,
Okay.
because I don't really know situationists, but as a good lefty, I'm vaguely familiar with a lot of these different movements. And if you're taking the notion of sort of the commodification of anything, if you talk about labor and alienation from your labor and those very sort of orthodox Marxist concepts, you then go to these very fun French people who talk about alienation from the cultural industry and cultural products, where you're then talking about how, like the alienation from MCU movies or Thomas Kincaid paintings or did I get that name right? Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
The guy, yeah, but the notion of this mass culture, because it's devoid of genuine human expression, is again a kind of it's a spiritual dulling as much as it. How is this related to curses? I'm so curious to see where you go with this. But yeah, and these are the group that was interested in the spectacle, because the Society of the Spectacle by Guy Debord has been coming up a lot, because and this gets into an entire thing about all we're seeing in politics so much is an inability to differentiate political action from political spectacle, and we're always staring at the spectacle, having great difficulty understanding that this is that in many cases these are serious things that affect human lives, or in many cases aren't. And that ability to differentiate the real from the spectacle is a whole thing. And this is doing that Society of Spectacle disservice, because I've never read it because I'm a dilettante and I don't know anything. Yeah. Anyways, that's the start and the end of what I know about situationists. And also I think they really liked avant-garde art. So yeah.
That's right. Yeah. No, yeah, I like that. It's a good way to explore that idea further and to kind of lay out the idea more clearly that it is about, cultural alienation as well, right? So I do like this part from their manifesto that I was reading, quoting from above. So our situations will be ephemeral without a future, passageways. Our only concern is real life. We care nothing about the permanence of art or anything else. Eternity is the grossest idea people can conceive of in connection with their acts. Situationist techniques have yet to be invented. So they're basically saying, we have this really radical idea. We don't care about eternity, man. It's all about the now, here and now, experiencing the world, which I like that. And then very promptly followed up with, we don't know how we're going to do this yet exactly. So this manifesto is sort of putting the theory out there and maybe letting the reader figure out what to do next. So I sort of reading it as meaning I read it as meaning kind of like touch grass. Just go outside, engage with people, explore the world, make art. They, talk about not wasting your life, right? Essentially getting away from the mediocre.
Peel yourself away from your computer and go out and experience something.
That's right.
Or do something cool and weird on your computer.
That's right. We're creating a situation right now. Our interactions, we are having a poetic experience, I hope, as I read my script, and we have a good laugh. It's an enjoyable time, authentic experience. Okay, so from this basically emerges the concept of psychogeography as well, because this is a way to sort of have authentic experience. So psychogeography is a means of mostly urban exploration that allows the participant to experience a situation or place by wandering and letting their own ideas and emotions interact with the spaces around them. So again, this is an authentic experience versus a mediated one. You're going out into the world, you're going out into the streets, you're observing. This comes a little bit, which I want to talk about probably another time. I don't really have time to get into the idea of the flaneur, sort of the Baudelaire idea of the flaneur. It comes out of like Paris in the 1860s. It's the man who walks around and just observes society, observes the culture going on around him.
Although I do not live in a city anymore, one of my favorite things in the world is to be in a city I'm unfamiliar with and just strike out and start walking and just see what kind of stuff. My brother-in-law is a fantastic person to do that with because suddenly we're in Chinatown and he's made best friends with the guy who runs the knife shop and things like that. And it's just, you get these and again, it is a very real experience. You build memories. It's a what's that? Oh God, I can't think of the term. It's a silly one. Right. It's enrichment.
Yes, it
If
is.
I take my dog for a walk, my dog not only requires exercise, he requires enrichment. He needs to smell some nice smells and piddle on some different grass and just engage in something outside of his very small indoor space. So he needs that enrichment. Yeah.
As do you.
As do I, definitely.
Well, yeah, I mean, we kind of all do, and that's what I do. Like, honestly, I like to travel, but even when I'm not, I go for walks every day. I love to wander. I like to be in urban spaces in particular, but, I like a hike. But in general, being in cities, being around culture, just wandering around and looking at stuff, observing people, very interesting. It's, it's basically my hobby, right? So, but as you mentioned, Guy Debord, I think you mentioned him. Guy Debord was the most famous theoretician of psychogeography, right? I'm not going to get into that in detail. That's for another topic. But you see this on display in fiction writers like Ian Sinclair. British writer Ian Sinclair? Yeah. And Alan Moore in particular. They're sort of focusing on, they're incorporating psychogeographical concepts into their work, namely focusing on London, and Alan Moore focusing on Northampton, England.
I'm very familiar with Alan Moore, so that, and that's also one of those things that I love. Even if you go into something like pulp mystery novels, which my mom loves and can be a lot of fun, the really good ones are using a language work with psychogeography, where the setting is more of a character than the protagonist, and it's entirely about evoking that setting, and that the crime and the plot and the conflict can only come from that setting.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a good series of books. It's like Amsterdam Noir, like Berlin Noir. They're just collections of noir and mystery tales set in a particular city, and you do get those vibes. So yeah, Alan Moore, he focuses on sort of Northampton, England.
Yeah.
Ian Sinclair writes about walking through London. So the author Brian Baker notes that in Sinclair's work, the city of London, the city's secret history is uncovered or discovered in urban topography, graffiti, underground publications, crime, and marginal artistic endeavors. So you're wandering around a place. Yeah, you're seeing graffiti everywhere. You're thinking, what could have happened here? What do I know about this place? What am I bringing to it? What is it reflecting back? Right? So it does rely to an extent on the mythological. Alan Moore's vision of psychogeography is a little bit different because he, as far as I can tell, he literally believes that the places hold the power. The actual physical space, the buildings, the bricks, the mortar, they actually are where our feelings come from. So it's sort of an interplay between our emotions and the environment, but the environment is what creates the emotion.
That makes sense to me.
Basically, that places can be essentially cursed or have a vibe or have a particular significance. So it's very interesting. Like the novel Jerusalem, for example, he takes the idea that Northampton, England is basically the center of the universe in a way. And he, talks about the history of the city from ancient times, pre-settlement or prehistoric settlements to the current day, pretty close. And then he's talking about how, incorporating his own family's history into the city. And it's really highly mythologized. I've been to the city and it's fine, but it does take some imagination to, to evoke that mythology and to make it seem more mythical than it actually is.
You have to have that city in your bones. There is,
Yeah.
to nerd out a little bit, there's a role-playing game, like a tabletop-style role-playing game I like, where their concept of magic is about taking the notion of obsession, and all of it is kind of tied into Alan Moore's idea of magic, which is sort of through manifesting in a personal or social way,
Right.
where belief results in whatever you call magic is, whether it's social belief or personal belief.
Mm-hmm.
And one of their things is the notion of people who are so obsessed with cities and places and know it so well and understand the history and relate to it so strongly, which would be Alan Moore with Northampton,
Mm-hmm.
that sort of magic comes from that sort of obsession is the word with that place. And it's all very much tied into the concepts you're talking about here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting where we locate these sort of the mythology or the vibes or whatever you want to call it, right? The sort of feeling we get. So yeah, so to me, it's a bit of a conflict. So you can have a mythological sort of because what I do when I travel, I like to go to places where things happened in the past or where somebody famous lived, right? So it's what I have found is going there in person really does a lot to sort of demythologize people. So I'm sort of seeing things like I'm more of a materialist. Things they're just rocks. They're just bricks and mortar. These are just buildings. These are just streets. Like I don't know if anything really hangs around in terms of vibes. So I don't know. What do you guys feel about that? Have you been somewhere? So I've been in the room where Vincent Van Gogh died. That
Oh,
one had
wow.
pretty strong vibes, I have to say, because they haven't changed the room in 150 years, right? They haven't done anything with it. Same floorboards, no furniture, graffiti on the walls that he wrote, the same. So you do get a good sense of, like, oh no, this is actually just a very small room above a pub, essentially, in a small French village, with fields with crows flying over them. So that was very evocative, and that was, I got a bit of a sense there of his life and who he was, but it was again demythologizing to a degree. Have you guys gone to a place where somebody famous lived? Did you do that when you travel? Not to quiz you, but
Occasionally, it's not
yeah.
a top destination, but I've certainly, like, if there's an interesting place to go, I'll go, but this is the place where this person lived, not necessarily, but I have been to any number of different kinds of historical sites
Hmm.
where X happened. One place that had vibes is the cannery that Tracy and I went to in Prince Rupert.
That's exactly the place that I was thinking
Ooh,
about.
Yeah,
a
and there's
cannery in Prince Rupert sounds creepy as hell. So do tell.
well, it was mostly this gigantic warehouse with surrounding houses, and you could go into the homes of the different workers, and these like dormitory style, like just basically big houses on stilts out in the
Hmm.
ocean. And this is the one where the indigenous people lived, and it was of course crummy. And then the
Right.
one where the
Yeah.
Chinese people lived was even worse because they were treated the
Hmm.
worst of all. And these very old, very complicated looking machines, and these tiny little homes for the management. And yeah, there was a very somber uh feeling about it. I think somber is the best word for it. I mean,
Yeah.
ever been to a cathedral? Cathedrals are designed for vibes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
very interesting because it does make me think if places, I guess it depends to the history of the place. Like it's built to, in that case, be sort of a temporary work. It's the purpose of these dormitories is for housing short term workers who are basically being exploited. So you
Yeah.
get the somber
Yeah.
vibes from that purpose. Like if honestly, if I couldn't imagine Auschwitz having anything but sinister, rancid vibes because of
Yes.
the purpose and what did happen there specifically. Like some places it would be unavoidable. But
And
again, if you're talking about just a place that's been around for 6,000 years, like a settlement or a city, it just becomes different because the purpose is not inflicting suffering, for example.
right, and that's actually why I mentioned cathedrals. Is
Yeah.
cathedrals are very clearly designed to create a sense of grandeur and a mixture of splendor, but also solemn is another word
Mhm.
for it, where they're very serious places. It
Mhm.
feels odd. It would feel odd to fart in a cathedral.
The echoes going. Blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah.
Blah,
When we were in Paris, we stopped at Notre Dame, and I ruined it for myself within about the first 10 minutes. There was a sign. There was this red box on the wall, and they had blankets in it, and I had mistaken the word for fire with the word for crazy. So I thought they were crazy blankets that you could wrap around people to beat out the crazy. And I started laughing, and there's a service going on, so everything's really quiet, and I'm trying not to laugh, and I just ruined it for myself. So it was so hard for me to take that place seriously after that.
See, that's interesting because, again, it's so that the interaction of place with psychology is sort of the psychogeographical thing. Like, how much of it is there is in our minds. That's actually really funny. Yeah, you kind of ruin the somberness. That makes sense.
I forgot about that.
Crazy blankets. I can see that too. Just being like, these guys are really medieval.
In case of crazy wrap in a blanket.
It's like, yeah, in case of madness. Yes. What's madness? Le fou.
Yeah.
In French. Yeah.
Yeah.
Blanket. Wrap them in une blanket, I guess. Okay. So just to carry on a little bit, to get to more of our core of this topic, because we're not even there yet. So for me, psychogeographical exploration is kind of what I do when I walk around. It's kind of about myth making as well. And, but it's also myth breaking. And it's an intersection of a reality, the mundane of the everyday. So if you've always wanted to visit London and you get there and you're like, oh yeah, it's not that great. It's just a bunch of bricks. I don't have that experience, but if you did, right? It's sort of
isn't that
the mundanity.
Isn't that something that happened with Japanese tourists visiting Paris?
Yes. It's that phenomenon. They would,
Paris disappointment. I think there's a word for it.
Yeah.
I have to say, the first time I went to Paris, it was a huge shock because I was in a particularly seedy hostel.
Oh.
And it was just, I get there, I'm like, where am I? This is a nightmare. Immediately I'm swarmed by scammers.
Oh no.
I got together and had a good time, but yes, I can see that. Yeah, the phenomenon I think is because Paris is so romanticized in Japanese culture, in particular, anime, all this stuff. There's that relationship, that romanticization. When they get there, they're like, "Oh no, this isn't like the pictures, right?"
Paris Shokogun, Paris disappointment, or Paris syndrome. And we loved Paris, but we also genuinely just did a day of hard tourism and then left.
Yeah. We were on our way out, so we took an extra day and just wandered around the main touristy stuff.
Yeah. It's a beautiful city. Yeah, I've been a couple times, and the first time I had that shock of like, oh, this is totally different. This is way busier, more crowded than I expected. Yeah, just because the idea is so much, again, bigger and smaller in a way with Paris. But yeah, so it's sort of you go into a place, it's the intersection of reality, right? The mundane of the everyday with sort of the ideals of the myths we might have believed in. So this place might be kind of a cursed place. To me, it kind of, again, I don't know if I believe in curses per se. It's, these vibes, these things that have happened, these histories. But I find Washington State to be extremely cursed. If we're going with vibes.
All of Washington State.
Pretty much, yeah.
Is it because of the Sasquatch?
No, it's a lot of things.
Oh, okay.
How do you guys feel about Washington State? Have you spent a lot of time there? You're both more prairie-focused folks. But
I've been there a few times.
I was there once when I was 5, so I don't really remember much.
Okay.
Yeah, it seemed all foresty and drizzly to me, which really spoke to me. I like that sort of thing.
Okay. I'm kind of glad you guys haven't spent too much time there, because then it's more on me to be more evocative. Because I've spent quite a bit of time there. My hometown is close to the U.S. border, 30 minutes by car, basically. So, this summers we're going to Spokane, Washington. We love to go to the White Elephant, the combined toy store gun shop.
Oh my God, amazing!
Love to go there, Washington. Yeah, very fun. So it is, to me, very creepy. So I'm taking you on a psychogeographical journey into one of the most cursed places in the world, which is Washington State. Dun dun dun. Now, if you're from Washington State, don't be offended. I'm being a bit melodramatic because, yes. But we all know that place is headed for total disaster, right? Particularly Western Washington. It's part of the Cascadia subduction zone.
Yes.
So that tectonic plate boundary runs all the way on the west coast. So for British Columbia, too. We're in trouble.
Yep.
BC to Northern California. So, of course, prone to massive earthquakes. Many active volcanoes in the region. Yeah, Mount St. Helens, Mount Hood, still active. So we probably all learned this in high school geology, maybe. We've all heard the big one. Yeah, so the geologists are predicting that because of the subduction zone, it's overdue for an earthquake. There's a pretty good chance that the big one, they're calling it, so an earthquake of over 8 magnitude is going to occur there within the next 50 years.
Oh, wow.
So scary.
I'd like to be alive to see the results of that.
You would, or?
I would.
That's the thing. Like,
Tracy's a bit of a volcano and earthquake nerd.
That part is interesting, but it's just very scary because what's going to happen then? Like, Washington State is not well prepared for that to happen at all, especially now if you have, FEMA not existing.
Yeah.
You hear a lot of predictions of what might happen. Essentially, it's going to be fires, floods, tsunamis, right? So Caroline Fraser, the author, I'll be quoting more in another episode, does note that when the big one happens, downtown Seattle will be covered by 80 feet of shattered glass from all the destroyed office buildings.
Oh, wow.
80 feet of shattered glass.
Great.
That's incredible. Then it'll probably get washed away by all the tsunamis.
By the tsunamis, yeah.
Melted by fires and things like this, yes. So actually quite scary. So chunks of land are going to shear off. Just nothing but a floodplain. They predict maybe 13,000 deaths. Triple the amount of other casualties, injuries. That's, pretty scary. There's volcanoes, fires, floods, huge disaster.
Yeah, I never stop to think about the human cost when I'm thinking about earthquakes and volcanoes and natural disasters.
Which I can't blame you. It's fascinating. Like, from a geographical, or like Yellowstone, when Yellowstone explodes, that's a huge volcano.
Oh, yeah.
Don't like that my family's, home is sort of within sort of the Pacific Northwest region, essentially. I would say we're Pacific Northwest adjacent. Also why maybe it's a little bit more creepy to think about. So anyway, you're driving down your car, scooting down the I-5, thinking about serial killers and all that stuff. Kind of disturbing. So like I say, spent quite a bit of time in Washington State. I want to talk a bit more about Seattle specifically. So we're homing in on our topic. I'm going to quote this verbatim from Wikipedia. It's decent enough source here, I think. So what is now Seattle has been inhabited for at least 4,000 years, so indigenous people. In the mid-1850s, the Coast Salish people of what is now the Duwamish tribe and the Suquamish, as well as other associated groups and tribes, were living in some 13 villages within the present-day city limits of Seattle. So evidence of continuous human habitation of a village site within the current city limits dates back to 6th century Common Era.
That stands to reason. Probably far earlier than that even. That's just how far archaeology goes.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And the site apparently was abandoned in approximately the year 1800 for unknown reasons. Ooh. I think people would, come back later, but specific abandonment, and I'm like, probably because it exploded. Probably had a big earthquake. Something like this happens. Like, okay, let's get the hell out of here. So anyway, we'll talk about there's probably good reasons to abandon this potentially cursed place. So, of course, the city of Seattle, named after Chief Seattle, again, indigenous leader who was born in the 1780s, died in 1866. So, Chief Seattle was a leader of the Duwamish and Suquamish people, and he was known as a friend of the whites who settled the area. So that's unfortunate.
That's kind of cursed.
Yeah, you don't want to be. Unfortunately, if we've learned anything, and we're all white on this podcast, I mean, mostly, I'm like 80% white, right? Friend of the whites.
I'm 120, so it balances out.
If I were any whiter, I'd be see-through.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm carrying the somewhat ethnically mixed background.
Yeah,
That's
you
right.
need to do you need to do the ancient problematic white thing and claim that 20% of your background makes you a representative and an expert. People love that.
They do, really do. So again, I'm white passing, which, come on.
Yeah, you're just white.
Just joking. I'm just a white person. Exactly. Yeah. We're all white people. So this is fine. We can insult ourselves. Being a friend of the whites at this time, kind of any time in history, is maybe a bad idea. So Seattle, Chief Seattle, he converts to Christianity, and he does play a role in accommodating the white settlers in the area. Of course, eventually the city gets named after him. And again, I find this phenomenon very funny. Developers like naming properties after the things they killed to build them. So they're like, cut down all the cedars on the ridge, and then we'll call it Cedar Ridge subdivision.
Oh, yeah.
That kind of thing. Yeah, very typical. Okay, so getting back to sort of more personal psychological experiences or just experience of the city of Seattle in general. Have you guys been there? I think you haven't, no? I think,
No.
Dave, you said?
I've only ever been past.
Well, okay, that's right. All right, so it's been there a few times. The last time I was there, it really strikes you what a fucked up place it is. Again, speaking of poorly planned developments in North America. So I was there with a friend last summer. We did the Seattle Underground tour. Very fascinating. So apparently, this could be apocryphal. I was looking online for a source. I got to dig deeper to find this, but this is what the tour guide told us, and it makes it makes moral sense, or it's spiritually true, I guess. So apparently, the founder of Seattle is David Swinson or Doc Maynard. Goes down to the waters of Puget Sound one day, or Elliott Bay in Seattle, and he puts a stake in the earth. Again, like I said, they love to put stakes in the earth to say, this shall be my land. So he decreed this would be, the new city is going to be built right here. Puts a stake in the earth. A couple hours later, high tide comes in, washes everything away. Stakes are gone. But he's like, you know what? We're going to build here anyway, because...
Of course, why not?
I said so. God damn it. A wealthy white guy. The tides aren't going to prove him wrong, So I do want to pause and just show you a picture of this guy really quick. Nothing too spectacular, but I have to say, his picture pisses me off. It makes me irrationally angry for some reason.
Oh my God. What a horrible man.
Why would you consent to be having your picture taken with your glasses on your eyebrows?
That's what I'm saying. The first thing strikes you is the glasses. Like this is a stern-looking gentleman, 1860s dress. Even that's kind of weird. He's a weird strap on it going on. Not strap on. He's a weird strap on situation going on. And he has some weird cowlick hair, but his glasses are perched right above his eyes on his brow, and it makes me angry because it's so stupid. Sorry, anyway, I had to share that with you because it made me irrationally pissed off. Like, buddy, come on, you're getting a nice photograph taken. You had to pose there for probably 5 minutes. Yeah. So, come on. Anyway, this guy founds the city of Seattle below the high tide line. They build the city there anyway. Of course, this creates a lot of problems. So, downtown, the entire downtown Seattle eventually has to be raised up to the height about the story of a building. So if you're in downtown Seattle, like Pioneer Square, all the buildings you're seeing at street level, that's actually the second floor of the original buildings.
Oh, wow.
Because there's such horrible flooding. And the way they did this basically was they built up walls around the buildings to the height of... So they built up walls around the buildings to the height of the one story. And they were filling in, so they built around this, each building basically had a wall around it, the height of a story. The streets in the middle, they gradually filled with trash, essentially. So to get to the buildings, they had to build stairs and ladders. So it's very, very bizarre. So they have these basically tunnels that they're filling up with literally garbage, dirt, rocks, of course, garbage, but garbage, animal carcasses, probably murder victims. Who the hell knows what? All this crap. So all of this trash is what composes now the streets of downtown Seattle. So downtown Seattle, the streets are made of trash, basically, and there are tunnels down there. You can do the whole underground tour. The streets are paved with trash. Anyway, yeah. So again, very striking sense of this place shouldn't be here. What are we doing? All this weird stuff. So the story I'd heard that before, but this time it just seems very bizarre. And then, of course, a friend of mine, he's from Europe. They decided to build the I-5 highway right down the middle of downtown Seattle.
They're famous.
They
for
were
that
wont
one,
to do, yes. So he's standing there. He's European guy, not used to all these cars. He's looking down, having a panic attack, 6 lanes on each side. Oh, what's going on? So there's this horrible highway in the middle of the city that's built on trash that's going to fall into the ocean. So
Brilliant.
Again, I'm really shitting on Seattle here. It's a nice city. I had a good time. I like the music, but it's kind of doomed and poorly designed. And unfortunately, I'll probably never go to Seattle again because it's in America. So anyway, that's just one Canadian's opinion. Okay, so that's Seattle. You go further south and west. You kind of come down the coast. You see this city of Olympia. As you move away from Seattle, vibes don't really improve, right? You really gorgeous landscape, beautiful. You have the evergreen trees, green fields, mountains, ocean. It's a really, beautiful place in terms of nature. But
yes,
you're on the highway. Yeah, there's like abandoned cooling towers, power lines everywhere, clear cuts, logging trucks, and ugly, ugly cities. Just kind of a problem with Canada, I would say. Nature is gorgeous, our cities.
Oh, we build the ugliest
We
goddamn cities.
don't try. We just don't
No,
even
we
try.
don't. And
No.
anytime we have a nice old building, we tear it down, particularly in Edmonton.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, just put up a square. Put up an aluminum square. That's all you need. So I think, unfortunately, very hideous. So I went to Aberdeen, Washington. I was there by myself at that time. That was in 2012. So do you know what Aberdeen, Washington? Any associations?
No.
Dave?
Yes. But oh my god, my Nirvana,
No
right?
worries. Yeah, that's right. Yes. So yeah, you drive on the highway, you kind of go past, you go almost all the way to the coast. You get to Grays Harbor. And actually, when you drive into Aberdeen, they do have a big sign there. In 2012, they had this as well. This is 13 years ago. Just Aberdeen, come as you are. It's like, aw, that's nice. Yeah, it's a sweet thing to do. And, the first time I was there, it was just kind of driving around, kind of again, creepy vibes. About a Girl comes on the radio like immediately, which I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
That's my favorite Nirvana song. This is like Kismet. Kind of nice. But the city itself actually is not that great. Not the nicest place. I went, to Kurt Cobain's house, go to that famous bridge, all that stuff. It's a very interesting and enlightening and very, very striking for me in terms of debunking a lot of the mythology, like my own idea of Kurt Cobain, right? As a Nirvana fan, right? Really interesting in terms of getting a sense of who the person was and sort of looking behind their self-mythologizing as well, I would say. So,
but just to explore that a little bit, what was the misconception you had, or what was the myth?
Well, in that one in particular, which I'll get to, the idea, you hear the song Something in the Way, this whole idea, oh yeah, I was such a neglected child, like I was homeless and I lived under a bridge.
Yes.
So you thinking like this city, you're imagining sort of this city overpass, this poor child, by themselves, shivering in the cold. And you go there and it's a block away from his house. It's a tiny little bridge in a little, small little park. He clearly was like a kid who's like, I'm having a tantrum, running away to the park.
Got it. Okay.
Sitting under the bridge for like an hour or two, and then okay, I'm gonna go home. Really get the sense of like again, I could be wrong, but when you actually are there in person, you see it's a block away, right? Like it's not like he's. I don't know. It's hard to explain. Like I said, I could be misconstruing.
I totally get what you mean there, where you get the sense of like an unbelievably bleak situation, and instead you just see kind of a city.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, it's a place. So going to places and seeing, oh no, they're just really places. And also, like for me personally, interesting because the town I grew up in is kind of similar. So, finally, 40 minutes in. Looks like on my recording, I'm going to get to the kind of the point. So we're going to take a psychological journey into the mythology surrounding Kurt Cobain, somebody I am a huge fan of. Again, one of my little obsessions, of course. Well, maybe not an obsession, but interest since I was like 13 years old. What do you guys know about Kurt Cobain? Are you fans, Nirvana fans? I assume so. Yes, we're all millennials here.
I mean, I'm technically too old to be a millennial. I'm a little bit north, so is Tracy. But no, I'm definitely Nirvana fan. I know a decent amount. I wouldn't say I'm an obsessive, but
Sure.
I can talk a lot about Nirvana.
I know very little because I almost exclusively listen to sea shanties.
Okay, that's right. Right. Okay, I can see. Yeah,
I follow the beat of my own drum.
Yeah, that's fair.
and that drum is a bowran.
Yeah.
Is that so sea shanty lingo?
Yeah,
I'm not privy to. You guys are the musicians. I just again,
it's that two-headed beater drum. That drum goes. Cool. Anyways,
nice. See, I tried playing guitar when I was younger. I played Nirvana songs. They're relatively easy. Those 3 chords. So I'm gonna just summarize sort of Cobain's life story and mythology. So again, Tracy, good thing you're not that aware because it would be new to you.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the popular understanding. So he's born in Aberdeen, Washington. This is near Seattle. Kind of, okay, he's a happy and creative kid, but his life takes a dark turn because his parents got divorced when he's about 8 years old. He was like an outcast loser who's in school. He turned to music to sort of as a self-expression, right? He forms Nirvana in his 20s, and soon enough, they're the biggest rock band in the world and of the era, basically defining. Kurt Cobain sort of considered pretty quickly the voice of a generation, right? Generation X. I guess, is that you guys?
No, I'd call us cuspers. We're between two. We're
Yeah.
if you were to look at the southern boundary of Generation X and the northern boundary of millennials, where it can be called in either one. So I've always felt that I have the cultural references of Generation X, but the attitudes of a millennial.
Same here, actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, upper lower Generation X.
Yeah, exactly.
Upper lower millennial. Yeah, about the same. But yeah, so he's kind of a voice of a generation, huge rock star, all this stuff. You know, Smells Like Teen Spirit breaks in '91, so grunge music becomes mainstream. You see other bands, you know, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam. They're reaching mainstream success as well.
Yeah.
And then Kurt Cobain marries Courtney Love, fellow rock star, and so their tumultuous relationship and Cobain's at the time rumored but now confirmed heroin use draws kind of quite a lot of bad press. So they're sort of the bad boys, you know, kind of maligned in a lot of the media. There's a very famous Vanity Fair article, all this stuff. Anyways, so all this stress was too much for him, and he commits suicide or was murdered in 1994. So this is a popular conception. I do not believe he was murdered at all.
I just to interject, I think that's a misogynist fable. I'm a Courtney Love defender, and I think the people who spend their time hating Courtney Love and Yoko Ono suck and don't like art.
Thanks, Dave.
Hole's a great band.
Correct.
Fuck you.
Hole is an amazing band. Lived through this again. When I was 13, 14, was all I listened to for like 3 years. Right, loved them. Right, so yeah, I don't think he was murdered. Right, the popular conception. I think I'd be curious if you polled somebody, if you polled the public. Probably more people think he was murdered, but I think again, as you say, yeah, and yeah, you put it better than me, Dave. I think those rumors are actually cruelly motivated, and they're harmful to Cobain's survivors. He's a mother, a widow, a daughter. Right? He's family, right? They're still surviving, and it's really cruel and sick to call somebody a murderer without evidence, right?
Yeah.
Well, and like
I think it's misogynist.
This horrifically depressed heroin addict becomes one of the most famous people on the planet overnight. The notion of killing yourself in that context is not completely beyond the, bounds of possibility. Like it's just, it's self-evident. And Courtney Love is an extremely imperfect person, was apparently a dog shit mother.
Yeah.
And we don't need everybody to be a hero, but the notion that it goes down to these like old tropes and archetypes in Western myth making. And if you look at the stories of the Romans, the stepmother did it comes up again and again whenever an emperor dies. It's the same goddamn thing. I genuinely believe it's, a lot of people repeat it's like not very critically. They just kind of believe it. But clinging to Courtney Love killed Kurt Cobain because it's also just conspiracism. The notion that a bad thing has to have an actor and some sort of plot in order for the bad thing to be real, because you can't accept that the world just sometimes sucks and a great artist kills himself.
So what's the justification that people have or not justification, but the reason they have for Courtney Love killing Kurt Cobain? Ooh. Like, how is that?
That will be for next episode, because I'm actually going to go into the conspiracy in a bit more detail. Not the conspiracy per se, but again, the interesting thing about going to places, visiting places, looking at evidence, psychogeography, these kind of explorations, trying to find, the authentic human experience, sort of deflating these myths. his death is probably the greatest myth surrounding him. I mean, there's a lot of self mythologizing, right? But the
Well, it's
conspiracy
like
theory
John
that he
Lennon
was
too,
murdered.
right?
Yeah, it's
Where John Lennon's extremely senseless murder
yes,
means that there has to be something bigger.
yeah,
No. He was just very famous, and, sometimes shit happens.
yeah, that's right. And people are it's sort of yeah. So we'll talk a bit more about the conspiracy theory and where that comes from and what the evidence is. But yeah, sort of relating it to what was happening in his life as well. And hopefully that'll be an interesting episode because I have to cover that next time, but I will get to it. So okay, so
Okay.
yeah, so the popular conception there. And so again, I was mentioning his possible murder and the conspiracy theories surrounding it. Probably the most popularly known myths around Cobain, like you say, Dave, that people are just sort of offhanding. Oh yeah, it's something I heard, right? Just something I heard.
There was a documentary, I think, yeah.
And that's the thing, and it gets pushed. Like what I find fascinating too is the sort of Johnny Depp Amber Heard scenario. Michael
God, don't get me
Hobbs,
started on that.
because even me, I remember when this happened. I was kind of vaguely in the ether on social media. I was like, oh, I guess they're both bad people. I don't know. But then Michael Hobbs is like, no, if you look at the documents and human behavior, this is textbook. He's an alcoholic abuser, and what she was doing was in reaction to that. This is not
Mhm.
hard. It's not hard to believe. She did nothing wrong. And it was all being pushed by the media because people have reasons for doing that, right? Yeah, it's taking a very simple situation, a very obvious situation, and spinning it to be misogynist. Again, another wonderful thread in this tale, misogyny. Right. So anyway, like I say, anecdotally, when I talk about Kurt Cobain with people, most people are, do you think he was murdered? He was murdered, wasn't he? Right. To me, the myth is that Courtney Love had Kurt Cobain murdered for his money, which frankly flies in the face of all of the evidence and really does require one to ignore the realities of actual plausible human behavior. So next week, or not next week, next episode, when we get into that some more, we'll see what I mean because it's really absurd.
There was also a private eye that Courtney Love had hired before Kurt Cobain had died, who tried basically to, and again, people do this all the time, is trying to claim that foul play was involved.
Mhm.
And then there's stuff like there weren't fingerprints. Anyways, Jen's going to go into all of it, but the short version is there was one person saying he was murdered, and therefore he was murdered, and Courtney did it for the money, despite being an
Mhm.
extremely successful and very wealthy person of her own right.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's so many again, so much evidence just to show that no, this is pretty clearly straightforwardly a suicide, and I want to get into that a bit more too next time in terms of talking about things like addiction and access to weapons. There's a
Mhm.
lot of mundane shit going on here. Normal, everyday reasons why people suffer and eventually sometimes commit suicide. Mundane reasons that we ignore. We want this grand conspiracy, this grand myth. And again, this ties back to psychogeography in the sense that like you don't have to go to his house and see it for yourself. No, this isn't like magic. It's thinking about human behavior and then, thinking about people as actual human beings and visiting sites that they're associated with them can help with that, I think. So yeah, I sort of feel like if you want to understand a cultural figure, you want to demythologize them and see them in human terms to go back to the reality of their lives. So psychogeography, psychogeographical explorations, they can facilitate this understanding. So to me, they're kind of coming to terms with the mundanity of life. Because again, there is the myth and then the reality. So the everyday physical materials, objects, with which people interacted, things like this. You can go to archives, maybe see letters people wrote, things like that. Like I'm really interested in and kind of fascinated by going to places where people I admire lived, right?
Mhm.
Kind of one of my hobbies when I travel. So I don't know.
Yeah.
And again, we kind of touched on this before. Like, it depends where I am. You don't necessarily feel a vibe. Recently, I went to Heptonstall, Sylvia Plath's grave. That was a fascinating and very, very, to me, instructive and really changed the way I viewed her life and her myth as well, which I'm not going to talk about here because it's a whole nother topic.
Mhm.
But yes. So yeah.
Yeah, sorry, and just to interject briefly, I get what you're spinning here, which is if you're to understand the story and understand that these stories which are particularly tied to places, if you were actually in that place and in that presence, suddenly you're seeing things from a completely different perspective and seeing past the myth into these sort of very real, tangible things in front of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the
It's interesting,
vibes.
Yeah, the vibes. Yeah, the mysterious vibes. They come from within. They come from without. They surround us all. Anyway, yeah, it's yeah. All right, so yes, I think mundanity is important. Visiting these places, very instructive. I'm going to give the broad outlines of Cobain's life in more factual terms, and I'm going to kind of put them in the psychogeographical context of the places where he lived, especially Western Washington. And I think he's interesting in terms of attaching place with geography because he already is. Nirvana and the grunge scene is so tied to Seattle, to the Pacific Northwest already.
So strongly.
I would say more so than most bands, because a lot of bands, you're like, you don't know where they're from. They're not necessarily strongly associated with their place, with their city. Some bands are just like from wherever.
Now, the Seattle grunge bands have more, and again, it does vary because there are always music that comes from scenes. And if you get into things like East versus West Coast hip hop and things like that, then that's going to be. I'm sure the psychogeography behind that is fascinating.
Right.
But yeah, when you think about Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Mudhoney, etc., they are Seattle, and that Seattle sound of that very specific 5-year or so period is really it's particularly in rock music, I would say, more than other genres, because I can't think of movements in rock particularly, because punk, hip hop, the city matters a lot, but in rock, it's usually if I think I don't particularly know what part of England the Who come from, and it doesn't necessarily matter.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, sure, a Who fan's going to kick my ass for saying that, but it doesn't matter to the Who like Seattle matters to Nirvana, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's the more clear association, right?
Yeah.
And then sort of the again, wrapping up with the mythology of the city. And you going to Seattle now, sort of 30 years later or more, actually, after all this happened, it was me and my friend, we're basically just a Gen Xer and an old millennial, hanging out. Oh yeah, Eddie Vedder had breakfast at this pub, right? Or whatever, this cafe. So, and everyone's just like us. They all have gray hair, wearing their Nirvana t-shirts. It's fine. And I was fine. I accept that. I accept that I'm a tourist, sort of, indulging in some nostalgia, but I think that's fine. Anyway, so yeah, and I think with Kurt Cobain, what particularly interests me in the geographical element is I feel like it really maps onto his sort of rise and fall, I guess. Starting off in Aberdeen, moving up to Olympia, to Seattle, kind of breaking away from that redneck scene. Ends up in LA. He ends up back in Seattle in a mansion, and that's where he ends it, right? I think there's interesting mappings, which again will become, I hope, more clear next episode as well. I think it's interesting kind of parallels. So he's born on February 21st, 1967 in Hoquiam, Washington. So a couple of towns. This is on the coast, Grays Harbor. It's right on the coast of Washington State. It's on river inlet. So Hoquiam, it's funny, this town's called Cosmopolis. It's probably 10,000 people.
That is something someone made up in a mediocre science fiction graphic novel.
Yes, very funny. So towns of Hoquiam, Cosmopolis, and Aberdeen, Washington, named after the town in Scotland. They form essentially a coterminous urban space located on Grays Harbor near the Pacific coast. So it's all one urban place, just called different things in different regions, kind of one place. So Aberdeen is about 175 kilometers from Seattle. I didn't do the conversion to miles, but it's probably about 100 and something. So Hoquiam is a hospital on the hill there. It kind of runs down to these little residential streets. Not that nice. Again, a lot of sort of clapboard houses. Very, very saggy and damp. The whole place is very, very damp and wet and rainy.
That's
so
fair.
You can see there's a house where his original house that Cobain was taken to as a baby. It's basically like a shack in someone's backyard, like a little gray shack. These are very, very nondescript places.
Right. It's just a sort of damp, cruddy little seaside town.
Yes. Yeah. The friend I was with, Dutch. He's like, man, if it wasn't for Kurt Cobain, nobody would even come to this place. Nobody would care about it. It's like, yep. Because interestingly enough, when I was there at first, there wasn't that many tourists. They have like a statue in the park and this, but now way more tourists are there at the memorial park. So it's kind of interesting. But yeah, so yeah, you can go to the house he grew up in. It's this kind of yellow cottage, little peaked roof. Again, pretty nondescript, right? You still got the old screen door, newspaper racks, a very mid-century house, apparently still owned by the Cobain family. And it has been difficult to sell. So I have to check for more recent information, but there's a really interesting Pitchfork article about that. They just can't sell the house. They had it up for $500,000. Like, oh yeah, and still the interiors are still the same basically as when he lived there. His graffiti's still on his bedroom wall. Like, it's kind of incredible. But as far as I could tell, privately owned. It's not a museum, so it's just there. The link to that Pitchfork article will be in the show notes. Again, neighborhood as a whole is not that great. Chain link fences in the yards. The houses look pretty rough. Paved streets are pretty crumbly. The downtown, again, things are falling into disrepair essentially in the entire place. So it's very similar to, again, I grew up, my hometown is kind of similar, but actually a little bit nicer just because we have a social welfare net in Canada. So it was kind of similar vibes though, right? Just suburban, kind of small town, shabby, upper, lower, middle class kind of situation. Again, seaside shanty town. I remember my family, the house I grew up in was right near the pits, they called it. Very lovely. Right by the river. Let's go to the pits, ride around your bike. Yeah, lots of things to do. Yeah. Hang around, step on a rusty nail,
beautiful.
What of fun. Yeah, exactly. Again, one of my phobias. I gotta get a booster just in case. Anyway, so just thinking about it, I gotta get a booster now. So yeah, if you're sort of familiar with the Cobain mythology, and this is kind of what I was talking about before, you sort of heard that he was homeless and like living under a bridge, over the Wishkah River. So this is the Yonge Street Bridge. So when you visit, it does indeed span the Wishkah. But again, it's like a block or two away from the house he grew up in. So again, in your mind, it's sort of this. He had a sort of a grand loser kind of mythology that he set up, which again I don't think was entirely accurate, and sort of maybe exaggerating the extent to which he, was homeless. So even like Chris Novoselic, who is the bassist for Nirvana, was like, "This is a tidal river. It floods. You can't sleep under there for any period of time. Like it's just something he made up. He maybe you can see him again." Like I would do that. I'd run away from home and sit in the park for an hour and then go home. Right? It's sort of this sense of
and
pretty normal childhood stuff.
And you can still be like a sad, miserable teen and run away and like flee your home, just like hang out under a bridge to have like some isolation because you might not get that otherwise. And
That's
it's
right.
but it's also not living rough, which is the implication and something in the way. And again, that's fine. Storytelling is mythologizing, and the grand loser narrative is his entire thing.
Yeah. And again,
the guy was, very sad and melodramatic about his feelings, and who among us?
And I know I'm like, it's too relatable. And that's the tragic thing about him dying so young is, again, you listen to the last podcast on the left does a really good series on the conspiracy theory specifically.
Okay.
The murder theory. And he was like, yeah, they were kids, like dying at 27. I remember being a Nirvana fan, like 13, like, oh, 27 is so old. And now I'm like, my God.
Yeah,
you were a
child. Like,
baby.
27 is so young. It's shocking. And then also, in that era, depressed Gen Xer, again. But the point kind of is it's relatable in a lot of ways, but it's not as melodramatic. It is just like, yeah, everyone had a shitty childhood in some ways. We all had these experiences. So again, it's just interesting. So yeah, he grows up in Aberdeen. Various communities in the area he spends time in as well. So Montesano, Washington is right nearby, maybe 20-minute drive down the highway. I do this in driving terms. That's the only way to get around in North America, particularly in the States. So a lot of this is driving distance. So you're driving from Washington to Aberdeen. It's like 20 minutes away. Very, again, similar, small kind of rundown town. You have some of the older, nicer Victorian style houses on the hill, but, seen better days. The band, the Melvins. So those those guys were they were friends and mentors to Kurt Cobain. They were from Montesano. So he saw Kurt Cobain, one of his first gigs, he saw the Melvins perform live in the parking lot of the Thriftway grocery store.
Amazing. Nice. The Melvins are cool as hell. I am a Melvins fan.
Yes, I saw them. Saw them a couple months ago.
Oh, damn. Good for you.
Utrecht. Yeah, it was very lucky. It was very cool. Looking up King Buzzo's politics, though, was a bad idea. Good live show. Good live show, though. He's one of those, both sides suck kind of guys. Anyway.
No, fair.
Maybe he's changed his mind. Maybe he's changed his mind. It's true. There's worse.
And whatever. My rant about the politics of musicians will be another day.
They're not necessarily the most politically savvy folks. So
it's fine. They're allowed to be morons. It's all good.
That's right. That's right.
Let people be wrong. There's bigger problems to deal with than whether or not a musician shares my political views.
Honestly, that's the thing. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, good point. Yes. So he sees them perform at the Thriftway grocery store parking lot. That Thriftway is still there, and I bought a hoagie there in 2012 for breakfast.
Delicious.
The day I was having is fun. So yeah, Kurt Cobain definitely wanted to mythologize his own childhood. So of course you do read conflicting things, because the way people feel, again, like you pointed out sort of earlier, Dave, is things feel bigger than they are. And when you get older, you realize, okay, I was being melodramatic, right? Things weren't that big of a deal. But so Charles Cross, in his biography, Heavier Than Heaven, he notes that Kurt Cobain did have a lot of friends, right? He's a good looking, funny kid. He played in bands. So he wasn't like this huge, totally shunned loser everybody hated, his childhood, though, again, we're kind of splitting hairs though in a way, because it was less than idyllic though. So his parents did get divorced, and that was traumatic for him, of course, right? Seems like there was some parental neglect. I mean, I don't know, parents getting divorced in the 70s and kind of going off and dating other people, kind of getting more into their new family, and really that would be very painful for a child, right? So I think obviously that's
and again, he was a depressed heroin addict who killed himself. I'm sure he came by it honestly, but the grand loser narrative can also have been and again, not even entirely a self exaggeration, just like a myth that gets spread around, and he just like lets it go, which is fine because it works.
Yeah, that's right, and it it was a style at the time. It certainly sold records, and I do wonder, like, if I didn't listen to Nirvana so much, would I have been a little bit happier when I was a teenager? I do kind of wonder, like, to me now, reflecting on it, it's sort of chicken or the egg, because, being a depressed, bullied kid myself, listening to Nirvana was very comforting. But then I am kind of wallowing, I realized later. So, it's chicken or the egg.
I'm sure if you listen to cheerful music, you'd probably still be a depressed, bullied kid, just with less relatable music.
Yeah, that's right. Like, I don't get this at all.
Yeah, I don't. Like, to an extent, it could be like, being the sad outsider was definitely an affectation of a 90s teenager. But at the same time, I don't think the listening to depressing music makes people depressed, because Lord knows there's a lot of depression right now, and I wouldn't say that the music is extra depressing. The music is the most popular music on the radio is pretty upbeat compared to what you had in the early 90s.
That's, definitely true. The early 90s was like, all right, we're making this a little bit grimmer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. But yeah, so, his parents divorced, and he's kind of shuttled between his dad and his mom, and he's kind of he's rebelling. He's a sensitive kid too. And I relate to this, again, who doesn't? Very sensitive kid myself. Very easily bullied, this kind of stuff. And I went through my rebellious phase, my goth, my grunge phase in high school. Pretty similar trajectory, actually. So every kid kind of does this, especially if you're a bit of an outcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, pretty par for the course.
I just went straight into nerd and stayed there.
See, I should have done that. I should have just hung out in the library. That's what I realize now. If I could go back, the library was the sanctuary that I didn't realize it was. I should have just, gone and hid with the books. But so, there's tales of him sleeping on friends' porches. So Dale Crover, the drummer from the Melvins, he'd sleep on his parents' porch. Who hasn't, though, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty par for the course. Again, slept on my friend's couch or porches occasionally. Well, I haven't. I mean, that was in the context of a sleepover, not homelessness, so it's a bit different. But anyway, this is also all happening in a little logging town where it's a bunch of not to be mean, but in Cobain's opinion, a bunch of rednecks. It rains all the time, right? If you want a sense of what Aberdeen's like to live in, it's kind of funny to, again, browse Reddit threads. Again, psychogeography. What do other people feel like when they go to these places? So it's kind of interesting. This is from the R Washington subreddit. This is from Fishy account 3 years ago. Aberdeen is not a good place to live, sorry. Salt water in the air wreaks havoc on houses. The poverty rate is high and drug abuse is rampant. Yeah, okay.
Cheerful.
Seems about accurate. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is from our Wikipedia subreddit, Automatic Blue 1878, 10 months ago. Here's what he says, or she, or they. I was so excited when I first went because it was Kurt Cobain's hometown, and I was bitterly and deeply disappointed. I mean, again, what were you expecting, though, right? And they continue, let's just say there's a reason Cobain was as musically angry as he was. Because that town sucks so bad. Which, again, to be bitterly disappointed, I was, because I wasn't disappointed. I was like, okay, this is more relatable. I understand where he's coming from a bit better. I appreciate his music on a whole nother level, I guess. But I didn't, I wasn't
from a crud hole. I relate.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds mean, but yeah, it's like, huh. But you do, you relate, a bit more, I think.
Yeah.
Right. So, but it's funny. I wasn't bitterly disappointed at Aberdeen. I kind of knew what to expect. Like, again, I don't know what you'd be expecting. Right. But yeah. So again, remember, Cobain died at 27. So he spends the vast majority of his life. He's in Aberdeen for 20 years.
Yeah.
Aberdeen and environs, Cosmopolis, the glittering lights. And Aberdeen itself is about 17,000 people. So relatively small town. Yeah. So his experiences in Aberdeen are reflected, of course, in his music, diaries, art. So again, looking at the Wikipedia article for the album Bleach, again, I need to get some more sophisticated sources, but this is pretty good for now. I don't have my books with me. When I'm near my books again, I'll have better sources. But yeah, so Cobain told Sounds journalist John Robb that most of the lyrics on the Bleach album are about my life in Aberdeen. Yeah,
fair.
What you know. Yeah. So, this song, Mr. Mustache. Again, I'm going to have links to these videos because Bleach is underrated, I think. I don't love it. I think there's some good songs on there. I listen to it occasionally. Album. Yeah. Good album. Exactly. It is. Actually, yeah. And honestly, a lot of the grunge from that era, I don't like. I really quite like Bleach. So Mr. Mustache is sort of a criticism of the macho guys, macho redneck kind of guys living in Aberdeen. The song Swap Meet. So if you're listening to this podcast, go listen to Swap Meet right now. It's a beautiful song. It's a very vivid portrayal, sort of an elderly couple who live on the road, going from swap meet to swap meet and selling their handmade goods. So Swap Meet, if you don't know, is a flea market, basically. Yeah. So it's a great song. Yeah. Conveys something, there's selling trinkets made of seashells, driftwood, and burlap, right? So interesting.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, so it's a great song, and he also vividly conveys the dark side of his Aberdeen life, but there's a lot of beauty in it too. So probably my favorite Nirvana song is About a Girl from the Bleach album, and it's a gorgeous, like, jangly pop punk song about sponging off his girlfriend, Tracy Miranda. So I love that song.
It's a great tune.
Yeah. So Kurt Cobain lives in the Aberdeen area until he's 20 years old, roughly. And he moves to Olympia, Washington with the aforementioned, Tracy Miranda. And here's where I'm going to take a break and pause. That's what I got so far, because I'm going to continue on to Olympia, some of the ethical things there, mapping to how Kurt Cobain's attitude and philosophy of life and of music and art were sort of influenced by indie aesthetics and indie ideals in Olympia, and then he signs to a major record label, becomes famous, and has all this conflict and so forth. So yeah, we'll get to that in the next episode.
Well, thank you very much, Jen. Psychogeography of Kurt Cobain and Cursed Places is, and also Aberdeen, Washington is a shithole in this essay. I love that.
It's kind of mean. I realized too. Like,
I love hating on a town, though. I love hating on a town. It brings me joy.
I'm going to be hating on my own town too, and I will be coming back to the Pacific Northwest in another episode. One thing you hear about the grunge scene is people say, "Oh, what was there? Was there something in the water?" And yes, there was stuff in the water, and in the air, and in the dirt, and in the food. And I'll talk about that in probably a couple of weeks.
Was it?
Yeah, the Pacific Northwest is a fascinating, troubling place. Again, very beautiful in terms of nature, but it also seems to me like an abomination. Because
this is a take I just never heard, because the Pacific Northwest is always kind of described as an idyllic paradise, with, Seattle being a troubled city that, despite being troubled, is an okay town, and then a bunch of fascists out in the woods. And
yeah,
this
that's I think
gets
part of it.
yes. But anyways, I'm fascinated to see where you go from here. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Okay, so yes, that was my tale of Kurt Cobain, psychogeography. Let's go out and have some authentic experiences, everybody. That was the Wonderkamer for this week. Again, that might be a 2-parter episode. We'll see how we edit it out. Tracy, Dave, any parting thoughts for our listeners?
Knowing nothing about this topic, I am absolutely fascinated by it.
All right.
So I can't wait to hear the next part.
Fantastic. Nice. And knowing a little bit about this topic, I am also fascinated, because I only know a little bit as a proper dilettante. So very excited. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to the Wonderkamer. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to the Wonderkamer. Find us under the Wonderkamer on Blue Sky, YouTube, and Instagram.